everyone, and welcome to another episode of Annie Talks, where we bring to you interesting stories about interesting people that you want to know about. I'm your host, Annie Rivera. Thank you for tuning in, and to those who have already subscribed. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and I hope you enjoy what you hear. And if so, I personally invite you to subscribe. Annie Talks is brought to you by Luxwear Trends, affordable, luxurious timepieces for every occasion, luxury that lasts forever, and that's what sets us apart from others. Find us on Facebook and Instagram or visit luxweartrends.com. That's Luxe weartrends.com. My guest on episode 19 of Annie Talks is a fellow Cal State Fullerton alum who I met while we both served on the College of Communications chapter of the Alumni Association. We were on the leadership team. I was the then president of marketing, later became the president. He was the tech and a marketing guru. Fast forward to today, he is the founder and host of the Digital Coffee Podcast, none other than Brett Deister. Brett is a techie at heart. He's a lover of good coffee and tea. He builds his own computers and tests out every new tech he can get his hands on. He's also an avid gamer. Brett has seen how much the industry has changed over the years. He also loves the rapid changes in the marketing industry. He loves talking to people about technology, and from that he started Digital Coffee Podcast to give a different perspective on the tech, marketing, and gaming industry. He wants Digital Coffee to be a place for anyone to go and learn about tech. So here now is my conversation with Brett Deister. Brett, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be on here as well.
Well, thank you. So for our listeners, let's dive right in. For our listeners, I'd love for you to give a sense of your background, how, your background in terms of college and education, hometown, that kind of stuff. So kind of fill in the gaps for everybody, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I actually was born in Orange County, California, actually in Fullerton. So I've been in Orange County all my life, actually. And I mean, I kind of, as a kid, played sports, played 3 different kinds of sports. I also kind of was, even as a young age, I was kind of grown up doing tech, using tech type of thing. So I remember still one DOS command. I don't know why I remember that one, but I just remember one DOS command. And so my parents kind of brought me up on there. My dad loves computers and tech. My mom is a computer science teacher and math teacher at Sunny Hills High School. So I've been around tech most of my life. But my education was in public relations. I graduated from Cal State Fullerton as well. So, I mean, that's kind of all in a nutshell, like who I am. I'm just kind of I'm a somewhat athletic, a little clumsy, but very, as I've heard, smart. I know tech and just kind of the digital marketing landscape pretty well.
So the digital tech landscape, as you say, just kind of fits in because of who you are and your background and your upbringing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So then tell us a little bit about who inspired you and what inspired you to create Digital Coffee, and what was that aha moment for you?
Well, I mean, I was working at Garrett Deli in Disneyland, and basically when I kept on like calling out orders, everybody's like, "Oh, you have a radio voice, you should be on radio." And my head is like, well, I need to figure out something to actually do. I'm not just going to launch something kind of blind. So I kind of just like thought about it for a long while. And then I was at a coffee shop, and just Digital Coffee just popped in my head, probably because I was around coffee, and I started to really like coffee and care about coffee quite a bit. That it kind of was like, oh, Digital Coffee. So, I mean, there wasn't a specific person that inspired me. It was more of just things in my life that came my way that kind of like bred the creativity. And so I mirrored kind of coffee and tech together because I felt they actually fit very nicely together. And so that's kind of how Digital Coffee kind of was born was because I was like, oh, digital and coffee works really well together.
So now, were you already interested in podcasting? Did you already have kind of a sense of what you wanted to do with digital coffee?
Oh, I knew about podcasting. I went completely blind into podcasting. I made mistakes that I figured out later on, but I made plenty of mistakes along the way because I had no idea what I was doing. I started off on an app that allowed you to do it, and then I actually went into using a mic, a mixer, and actually, making it more professional as I went along and figuring out like sound and knowing that everything from your computer fan to helicopters flying over can create sound and be very frustrating in post-production.
Yeah, story of my life. I get that all the time here as well. So now tell us a little bit about who your mentors are. So who do you, well, I don't want to say aspire to be, but who do you look up to and who are your mentors? Who influences you?
It was a various different people. Along my life, I had a really great youth pastor that we kind of lost contact with. It's because we moved away and stuff. Just one of my friends that's actually getting married soon. He's been pretty much, he may not get everything that I'm doing, but he still encourages me to go on. And then I have a life coach, which she's helped me quite a bit on figuring out life in general. So she's been a really great help for me just to kind of nail down what I actually want in life, because that's always the hardest part, and what I want for this podcast as well. But yeah, those are the ones that kind of inspired me. I think a lot of it's kind of been more innate, inside myself, pushing myself to, motivate myself in a way, because usually it's just, especially if you're a one-man show, it's usually just all about what you make of it. Even though people can help you along the way, it's more about what you can make of it.
Well, then that segues perfectly into this next question. How does Brett stay motivated? How do you keep yourself positive and keep going?
It's learning how to take breaks well, because sometimes, even me, I can become a workaholic and just work, and knowing and understanding that there's a time and place to take a day off that's actually healthy for you is another thing. And also just knowing that I can always do something better, I think helps motivate me way more. For example, I'm using Adobe Dimensions to do 3D, kind of it's a program that allows you to put 3D bottles into any background. And so I've been testing that out for my content for Visual Coffee as well, and then pushing into more video too. So it's more of me pushing myself to the next level wherever it can be, but also giving myself some room to grow and some room to, fail or make mistakes, because along the way we're going to make some failures and mistakes, and you just need to at least acknowledge it and be like, okay, how can I do this better?
Got it. So if you're anything like me, and I think of myself as savvy, technologically speaking, to a point, but I always like to see what's kind of on the cusp, what's the new trend, what's coming down the pike. Is that something that you do as well?
Yeah, I usually keep up to date with what's going on with social media in general, also with what's going on in the cryptocurrency industry. It's very volatile right now, so I'm always looking into that, seeing what's going on with that as well, and then just kind of looking at what the gaming industry has to offer, because a lot of times some of the trends come from the gaming industry. So live streaming was the gaming did that first, actually, with Twitch, and so you all these different industries have their different innovations, and they're all part of tech, and I always talk about each one of them. So yeah, I'm always looking for what's next, or at least being aware of what's next. So Vero is or was the new popular social media that was actually pretty old, but it just got popular all of a sudden. So I got myself on that. I've been looking at the quote unquote free speech social medias as well, because there's been other alternatives popping up because people have been either upset or not really liking the current stuff that's going on in social media as well. And then also looking at the differences that Google makes too, because they always change their SEO all the time.
Now, do you? When I was listening to your podcast a few times this week, I was listening to some of your topics, and do you? How do you come up with your topics, and then do you have guests on your show as well, or is it just kind of a Brett monologue, so to speak?
I mean, I want to do more interviews. That's kind of like my next push. But yeah, it's supposed to be me monologuing and using my kind of like knowledge about it. Also, I look at all the tech blogs and see what they're saying, and then kind of, if I agree with them, then I say, yeah, I mean, this is obviously good. If I don't agree with them, then I'll kind of like give an opinion about it as well. So, I mean, my whole thing is to try as my best for my podcast to be as unbiased as possible. Because right now most media is either swayed left or right, and it's usually more of a hard left or a hard right, because we've been developing our kind of like our tribalism, as a lot of media has finally like recognized. So I'm trying to like be like middle, but I can go middle left a little bit and then middle right a little bit, and kind of be like, look, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why this doesn't make any sense. But that's kind of how I've kind of done it. Also, poking fun at the tech sector is always fun too, because there's just some things where I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I know you guys are trying to do the quote unquote right thing, but it doesn't make any sense.
Got it. So now, what do you want your listeners to get from Digital Coffee?
I mean, what I want to do is to let them get a sense that there are other people out there that are talking about tech that may not agree with everybody else as well. And tech in general, especially gaming in general, is kind of it's not homogenous. There's not one viewpoint that people agree on, and I'm pretty sure tech is that way too. It's just we hear from one side 9 times out of 10, and it sometimes is a good thing and sometimes is a bad thing. But I want to leave with it that they can come there, they can at least get a different side of the story, because every story has a different side to it, and at least know that, I mean, I'll make mistakes too, because I'm one person trying to figure it all out. But if someone comes to me and says, hey, this is wrong, I'll be like, okay, let me look into it. And if I'm wrong, then I'll cop to it, because I'd rather say, you're right, I was wrong. So, I mean, that's kind of how I've kind of like made it, is that I want people to come, feel like they're sitting, actually, as my new video series, what I'm trying to do is to feel like that they're sitting next to somebody and we're just talking about tech, or I'm talking about tech and they're listening. But I mean, like that type of sense of like sitting next to somebody and we're just talking about tech, talking about what's going on in tech, and if we like it or not like it, or if I like it or not like it. But that's kind of how I've started to want to model it, because I feel like so many people are just talking to everybody, and I want to like make people feel that that they're listening to one person, and it feels like that I'm talking to them.
Got it. Now, you also mentioned gaming, so there are other are there other podcasts that you have on Digital Coffee? I think, is Digital Coffee a podcast and then you have other subjects, or do you have the other platforms as well?
Well, I mean, I kind of dub it different names, but it's still under Digital Coffee. So it's like Gamers Cafe is what I call the gaming side of it, which I just specifically talk about gaming, because I felt like when I was just doing Digital Coffee, I was talking about everything, and I was trying to like, I felt like I was trying to like speed through everything, and I was like, I don't really want to feel like I'm speeding through things. So I kind of like sectioned them off. So like one week I'll talk about what's just going on in tech, from everything from like, what IPOs are launching soon, like how the financial health of some of these companies, the layoffs and everything else, and the new updates and everything else. And then morning marketing is my other one, which I'll just talk about what's going on in the marketing industry, because that is just as reliant on tech as everything else is nowadays. And then my Gamers Cafe, I'll just be talking about what's going on in gaming, because there's a ton of things that go on in gaming every single week. I mean, everything from Overwatch, which is a really popular Blizzard game, just launched their new Overwatch League, and it's really popular because the game's really popular, and they've started their own league, to like what new games are coming out, to my impressions of a beta or a game that I'm going to be reviewing eventually going to be reviewing or in the process of reviewing. So I try to do all of them, but section them off. It's still under digital coffee, basically.
So you have, sounds like a pretty good demographic reach. So you reach, those that are tech savvy, and then you have those that are gamers. I think my kids would love to listen to your Gamers Cafe. They're also gamers, and they have live Twitch streams and so on and so forth. So I see them always, on their Twitch streams. And so I know that that's something that's definitely, a booming platform and for young millennials and younger who love that. And I think that you have a really good niche there. And I think, we'll more and more people should, well, I'll definitely do my part in helping you boost that and reach out to some of the gamers that hopefully on my platform. So talk about your some of your professional and personal accomplishments that you are most proud of.
I think personal is just I'm always learning something new. I mean, I figured out how to shoot video while I'm doing it, like in the shot, and like changing the webcam every once in a while with what I've learned as well. I think professionally, kind of just like figuring out the branding, figuring out the logo, making the logo myself, like changing it, morphing it as I need to go on. And also, I mean, one of my kind of like accomplishment is when Vine was actually popular. I know Vine 2.0 is coming out, or V2 is the original guy that created it. He's going to make a new one. But when that one was still new and hot, I basically took basically a little splice of a video of a new game that was out now, but it was coming out now soon. And I basically spliced a good portion of a 6-second thing together, and I kind of made a funny, basically content about it. And basically it was a lovely ride through town, and it was called Battlefield, and it was basically all these explosions happening, all these gunfire going on, and then just at the end of the shot, he just hit something, and that got it was getting close to 100,000 loops, and I didn't actually expect it to get that good, but I just thought it was a really nice clip to actually upload. So that was kind of like a good professional accomplishment of, oh look, I made something that was actually pretty popular. I didn't actually expect it to get that popular type of thing.
Wow, that sounds cool. Do you still have it available? I would love to check it out.
No, because Vine as it is, it was shuttered. Twitter, because Twitter bought it out. Twitter was like, oh well, we're not really investing that much into it. Twitter has had a kind of a tumultuous kind of stock market cycle. It finally actually recently made money, but hasn't made money since it went public. And so Vine wasn't getting as popular as they wanted to until they shuttered it and just made it a camera. So I think that's lost to the internet, unfortunately.
Okay, so now where do you see yourself in, say, 5 years from now?
Hopefully still doing my podcast, but actually morphing it. So eventually what I want to do is to make it more of a digital hub for different types of stories, because I feel like digital coffee, even though I kind of started as tech, could actually be just digital coffee of people sitting down and listening to something with their coffee. So hopefully I can do that and get people to partner with, eventually make this, somewhat profitable, turn a profit more often, keep on continuing to make different t-shirts and coffee mugs that I do, and kind of make this a hub for people to sit down and listen to Paul if they want to, or listen to stories, because funny thing is that radio stories are becoming popular again through podcasts. That's a very, very old school way. I think Marvel's doing their own Wolverine digital story through podcasts. So figuring out new avenues and new ways of doing it, and kind of keeping digital coffee as it is, still unique, but also morphing it into something bigger than what I originally anticipated it to be.
Now, earlier we talked about social media. I know that you have, you're always scouring the social media scene and looking to see what's trending and talking about, topics that are hot topics and that kind of stuff. So where do you see social media evolving in, say, the next 5 years from now?
It's going to become way more niche than it is. I think we're seeing the end of kind of like the big conglomerate ones. Even Facebook's been losing younger people quite a bit. I think since the rise of people just not trusting big companies to keep their privacy safe, and that people are getting smarter and wising up to that they hold a lot of data about us. I've known this for a while, and I've been okay with it because I knew about it, but I think a lot of people weren't as aware of how much data they keep on you. So I think it's going to become way more fragmented just because of kind of the political landscape that's been going on, how politics have been influencing culture, and how we're kind of being more and more divided as it is. I think social media will actually start doing that as well. I hear calls from people that are more skewed to the left saying how Twitter is toxic, and then people from the right saying that Twitter, Facebook, YouTube are censoring us. It's going to become way more of echo chambers as well. That's one of my bigger fears is that the echo chambers are just going to become more entrenched, and we're going to become more entrenched without listening to each other. And I want to still have a society where we actually listen to each other that we disagree with, because that's how we thrive and grow. But we'll see what these companies actually do, and we'll see how the users respond to it, because they can do a lot of stuff and the users are like, I'm done with this, I don't want to do this anymore. But social media is going to become there's going to become a lot more, and they're going to find their niches, and they're going to be satisfied with the niches that they have.
So I have two more parting questions for you. For, let's say, podcasters or would-be podcasters, somebody that's maybe contemplating a podcast or don't know how to start a podcast, what advice can you give aspiring podcasters on how to start one, or where to start one, and how to go about starting one?
Yeah. I would start off with just figuring out what you want to talk about first, because that's always the hardest thing is what do you want to talk about? You can have a lot of talents and stuff, but figure out what do you actually research the most? What do you actually read the most? And passion does help too, but if you're researching a lot of different, one specific thing, that may be something that you can actually talk about as well. Also, understand if you're doing it by yourself, you have to be entertaining yourself. You have to make sure that your voice is going up and down, you're not monotone, because if you're monotone, no one's going to want to listen to you because you're kind of bored. So that's another thing. Figure out a name first. It doesn't really, it can apply to your industry if you want to, but as I know from tech companies like Apple has nothing to do with tech. You can make your logo, brand, whatever you want it to be, and market it successfully, even if it doesn't sound like it should fit that. You can kind of make it yourself. And also, kind of make sure that you're human. Bring your humanness to it. And you don't have to have the best equipment. You can find pretty good equipment on Amazon for less than $100. But just start off simple, and then just kind of grow your skills, because it's going to take time to grow your skills. You're going to make a ton of mistakes. I broke my RSS feed 3 times. That's frustrating. But I learned along the way, what not to do, what to do as well. I think when you do start it, I would say either start it on Anchor Radio, which is, they start off as a, audio blogging kind of a thing. Now they're getting into podcasts a little bit more, and that's kind of a free thing. So I'd start off on that and find the free sites. And then if you kind of figure out what you want to do, then go into other platforms like Lipston and I use. There's Speakler or whatever. There's a ton of them. So then you can get it out to more people, because I'm on just about everything. My podcast is on just about everything that I can get it on, I guess. But yeah, start off with the name, figure out what you want to talk about, buy the right equipment for your budget. Don't go over budget because you can go over budget quite quickly if you want like the best things. And then just start. I mean, because that's the hardest part is to start it.
Yeah, it took me a while. I was contemplating. I have a YouTube channel and I kept thinking, well, goodness, it's going to be hard just to create YouTube, content and then being consistent with that. And it's one thing that I remember a mentor, actually a YouTube mentor telling me that, be consistent. If you say you're going to upload every week, make sure you do upload every week. And I've been, knock on wood, I've been really good in being able to do that. But you're right, it is starting. That's the scary part. I mean, literally, what do you do? What do you start? What do what do you talk about? But honestly, I have to say that it's gotten better with time, and I'm not, nowhere near where, the perfection that I want to be. But I'm learning, like you say, I'm learning, and I'm finding like-minded people like yourself, who share that passion, with podcasting, and these are the kinds of these are the people that I like to, surround myself with, so that I know that, what I'm doing is, making a difference. And I think for each one of the podcasters that are out there, the platform that we have, the ability to be able to be a voice for somebody who would otherwise not have a voice, or, be able to maybe give a different perspective to a topic that's already out there that maybe perhaps someone else hadn't thought about, or maybe they had thought about it and now, understand they're not alone in that thinking. So those are the kinds of things I think with podcasts specifically, and why I like, this medium so much, is because we have that ability to be able to affect change, no matter how small or how large. So I definitely commend you on that. And I think all your advice and words of wisdom that you could share with aspiring podcasters, and even with, some of the veteran podcasters or mid-level podcasters as myself, can actually garner some wisdom from. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. My last question to you is for our listeners out there. What parting words of wisdom can you tell our listeners?
That anything that's worth doing, you'll have to work a lot at. I mean, that's just a part of life. Life is about you working hard. Nothing's going to come that easy. And even if it does, there's always going to be something that you have to work towards to make it better. So don't get discouraged because it's difficult, because difficulty breeds resilience. Resilience kind of breeds, it eventually will give off to success as well. But I mean, if you're thinking about giving up, just think about it. Think like how far I've come, because I do that sometimes too. I'm like, oh, look at this. But think about how far you've come and what you've learned from it, and then keep on pushing yourself. I mean, that's the best thing that you can do. I mean, if you want something to be successful, you gotta work hard at it.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Brett, for being on the show and for just really sharing and imparting some of your inner wisdom and things I know that myself and our listeners can definitely, benefit from. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, that's it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this podcast with Brett Deister, the founder and host of Digital Coffee Podcast. Brett has great insight in the world of technology, gaming, and marketing that we each can take away some good pieces of information. Now, if you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to leave a rating and a review. I would really appreciate it. It would help out this podcast a lot. And if you haven't already checked out my YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? There you'll find videos on fitness, product reviews, my Celebration Awareness series, and more Annie Talks. I'll have the link in the show notes of this podcast. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to subscribe to Annie Talks podcast and be notified every time we upload an episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and keep listening to Annie Talks.
This is Brett Deister from Digital Coffee Podcast, and you're listening to Annie Talks.